Gentlemen, I'm calling to order the Monday, July 3rd Board of Supervisors regular meeting. If we could stand for Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second. And if there's no addendum items, I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Moving into presentations, Superintendent Grimsley is on vacation, as today is her birthday, so I guess she needs to be.
And she had reported last month that she would pick up on her monthly reports starting again next month.
In August, okay. Great. So we'll go into the Company 4 monthly report. Chief Gerald.
Good afternoon. So we continue to stay in phase 2, or what I call the walk phase of this revitalization effort. Our focus right now is training, certification, and we're on the tail end of what I would consider recruitment because of our first meeting being tomorrow, and most of those people that have applied will be hopefully read in for their first reading, and I'll explain that if we need. So far in the training and certifications process, we have 13 trained CPR members and affiliates, which is a huge step in one big chunk. What I've found is working with the County Emergency Services Coordinator to set up Company 4 specific CPR classes. We have so many people in line to be trained. If the first reading, second readings go well, and the affiliation process goes well, we'll have upwards of about 40 people to train, including some legacy members that have been here before, January the 26th. We have 5 new basic pump operators. Those are people that can operate the pumps on fire trucks. There are 2 different levels of pump operator. One is basic pump, which is what we've offered. We hosted one of the classes, and then Sperryville Fire hosted the practical class. And so the goal is to ultimately get those same 5 people and others into a more detailed, long-term driver pump operator class, which is about 36 hours. Their class, this basic pump class, was about 16 hours. So it's sort of introductory, if you will. We have the 1 new firefighter that's been state certified. When someone goes through firefighter class, they also include in that CPR, and they also include hazmat awareness. When they go through firefighter level 2, which is a more advanced, they also get hazmat operations or hazardous material operations. So they're teaching them how to actually operate within hazardous situations and materials. So it's a good thing. I have talked to the deputy chief in Fauquier at the fire academy there, and he's willing to open up classes for the influx of our new members to attend their fire academy, which starts, I think the registration is due by the end of, or by the beginning of August, but the class starts in August and then goes through April. And what they've done is they've created a firefighter level 1 and firefighter level 2 combined class, so it's a longer duration. Instead of about 3.5 months, it's a 6-month class. Actually, that's the kind of training I received a while ago. And it worked really well because you got this immersive opportunity to learn a few things. I just released 3 new ambulance drivers at Company 4. And what they do, I think I may have mentioned this last month, but I give them a very detailed letter explaining, I've shared with Gary Curry the details of this letter, but it explains everything from responding to calls, operating the sirens and filling out reports, and a variety of different things, administrative things. What to do if you're in an accident en route to a call or responding to a hospital with a patient. How do you handle those kind of scenarios? And I mentioned before that what I do is after their EVOC class, after their emergency vehicle operator class, I still give them more training. So they each get 10 hours of driver training. Then they ride on a call with me to a dispatch call, and then they drive me to a call. And it works really well because I think they have this higher level of comfort, would you say? Debbie Donna is one of them. And so we'll continue that regiment as we go forward. So we have been dispatched on 149 calls since the resolution was signed. I mentioned before, I track performance metrics of the company from last year and again this year. We're at about 80% higher dispatch rate than we were last year, which is interesting. Don't know why, don't know how this come about, but they were dispatched at this time on about 84 calls. We're at 149 calls. 104 of those 149 calls, 104 were EMS and 45 were fire or rescue related. We're hosting our first membership meeting tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Wednesday. I'm sorry, Wednesday, yes, right. I'm getting lost in the week. Wednesday at 7 p.m. at Company 4 Fire Hall. And we will offer first reading for 42 new applicants. A couple more folks have stepped up and said they wanted to help in some way, shape, or form. So that's a good thing. And then the way our bylaws are set up, we have 30 days to do an investigation if we so choose on them, whether it's DMV check or background check or whatever. And then the following month, 30 days later, essentially, is their second reading. And if they're voted in at that time, they become members and we move on with training and other things for them. One thing that we're working on, because not all of those people are going to run calls, they're not capable of running calls, but they can help and they want to help. We're a membership of the community, for the community, and so they want to be able to help. And so what we're doing is forming a variety of committees, working committees, that can basically take some of the burden and workload of day-to-day things at the firehouse and distribute that. So facilities management, apparatus management, grounds management, things like that, fundraising, those kinds of things. So we'll, once we have these people and others in membership, then we'll decide who gets to participate in which groups and based on volunteerism through that process. So the court case is behind us, or so we thought. We have to be in court, I think it's the 14th or 15th of this month for a FOIA discussion. And so we'll, hopefully at the end of that, this will all be behind us and we can actually get some work done and work together towards a positive future, but we'll wait to see how that plays out. So I think that's all I've got unless anyone has any questions. I'll wish you a happy 4th of July. Safe 4th of July. And as one fire chief, I was reading an article outside said, fireworks are illegal in the state of Virginia, so unless they're by a certified pyrotechnic company. So that's all I've got.
Hopefully tomorrow will be quiet.
Let's hope, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, at this time, we'll go into public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please be recognized when you come up to the mic. Give us your name and the district you're in. Anyone wishing to speak? Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Hi, how are you? I saw on the agenda that you have something about the pole-mounted,
Name and district, thank you.
oh yeah, Diane Bruce, Piedmont District, I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
The pole-mounted, which is speed display signs on the agenda, and I don't know what the status of that is right now. I don't know what you're going to discuss today, but I live in Sperryville on Route 522, just as you're getting into Sperryville from Culpeper. And that's a straight road all the way from the intersection in front of the corner store, way on out past the cemetery, past Route 231. And it's a speedway now. Particularly a speedway, well, it's a speedway in both directions. There are passing lines there. I have asked several times VDOT, talked to the sheriff about trying to get just double solid lines on that stretch of road. Maybe that would help the speedway part. People are just passing. It's a nice area to just speed and pass other cars. They fly in either direction. And so I'm hoping that we'll get a sign. I think we ought to have a sign in both directions, but I suspect you're only looking at a sign going into town. I hope you get one because I'm sure you're experiencing the same thing on your end. It's incredible. And the speed violations are not just the tourists. They are those of us who use that road all of the time, including the truck traffic, the work traffic. It's not just the tourists. The 25-mile-per-hour speed limit sign just beyond the corner store, as though you're heading towards Culpeper, is too close. By the time they've made that turn and negotiated the traffic going in and out of the parking lot behind the corner store, they don't even see that sign that says 25 miles per hour. And of course, the locals do. The locals know where the law enforcement stops and tries to take control, but that doesn't work either. So I hope that you can do something about changing the location of that speed limit sign, getting double solid lines, and getting our pole-mounted display signs. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. The Deke Deacons, Stonewall Hawthorne District. This is not a concerted effort, totally random. I've noticed, and I haven't had a chance to speak on this issue about the thing, and I'm going to mention to Ms. Bird, good luck. It took me 11 Board of Supervisors meetings, 1 letter to the editor, conversations with the sheriff, conversations with Mr. Carney's predecessor, to no avail. I got 2 anemic signs at the end of each part of the village of Woodville. Ironically, when a supervisor moves in there, there's movement. Surprise. I had a daughter and her husband and 3, at that point, infant children and household pets. After 2 pets were killed on that 522, which is unabated, and talk about a drag strip. If you want to drag, come right through Woodville. They had to move. They moved over to Page County. So I lost the immediate access to 3 of my grandbabies. I'm just kind of curious as to what I did wrong after 11 Board of Supervisors meetings. And I guess I'm going to have to go back to diplomacy school because it's interesting that nothing happened except 2 yellow signs that do nothing. So good luck, Ms. Bird.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Anyone else? Not seeing anyone in the courtroom. We do have some folks on Zoom. If you're wishing to speak during public comment, please raise your Zoom hand to be recognized. All right, not seeing any hands. We will close public comment. Moving into consent agenda. Yeah, stick around for a little bit.
I move, Madam Chair, that we adopt the consent agenda, please.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
The last I checked the radar, it looked like it was going to brush by us, so
Yeah.
this is the
This
edge.
is a brush.
Oh, my God.
It's a wide brush.
It's unbelievable. I think Kayla's going to hang out for a little bit longer.
Just hang out, yeah. All right. Now going into no appointments, so old business classification and compensation study update.
Yes. Good afternoon. So at this point, I have had a chance to speak with, meet with, or otherwise communicate with all department heads again on the compensation study, with particular focus on those who had concerns immediately after the June 5th last update to the board. Several of those departments have provided even further updates to their job descriptions and asked some questions that really I need to follow up with Baker Tilly on, and I have followed up with Baker Tilly on that last week. Baker Tilly and I are coordinating a work plan such that they have all the information back to me in time for me to meet with those department heads ahead of the September board meeting, at which point I'd like to make a final recommendation to you all for consideration. So that's the plan at this point.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you're gonna circle back with each department.
Yes.
And what does Baker Tilly have in hand now that, I mean, we saw what I guess was the latest,
Yes.
tables or compensation ranges by
Yes.
position, and then what happened after that?
What happened after that is I met with the department heads, talked to all of them, but spent significant time with those that had major concerns after that June 5th update to the board. And so 2 of those department heads, the treasurer and the commissioner, have provided substantive updates to their job descriptions, some of which were fully scrapping these job descriptions and
Okay.
offering new ones. Baker Tilly now has those new job descriptions in hand. There were a couple other departments that provided updates to their job descriptions as well. Didn't scrap any, but provided edits. Baker Tilly has that information as well.
Okay,
And so they will do a review of that updated information and provide it back to me. And I won't come back to the board until I've looked at that, Mr. Curry has looked at that, and we've had an opportunity to meet with the department heads that are affected.
I just want to say thank you for circling back with the department heads. I know Chair Donahue and I had sort of an ad hoc meeting a couple of weeks ago with one of the constitutional officers, and I know that it meant a lot that you circle back and talk with them about their concerns. So thank you very much for your diligence in this regard.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, thank you very much. Pole-mounted speed display signs.
As you might imagine, I didn't accomplish much during June while I was away, but I was able to work on that 2 days this week and visit the sites again. I don't know if Ms. Bruce might have seen me in front of her house at that sign. As the board's aware, VDOT did approve, they pre-selected several signs which they deemed to be likely approvable. And the sign heading from Culpeper towards Woodville at the transition to 35 miles an hour, the sign from Woodville into Sperryville where it changes to 25 miles an hour, the curve warning sign just up the hill into 11 from the new base at
Deer Beach Spring.
yeah, just north of there, is approved, both sides of Flint Hill, and that's all that they pre-approved. So I'm gathering the final design documents, and we'll be submitting that likely this week.
Nothing for Woodville?
The Woodville is the one on the Culpeper side. That was the first one I said.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you
Yep.
meant Got it.
Which, for whatever reason, VDOT didn't think the other direction was needed. And so maybe if we can get these in our, get them in, and then we can consider
When
further.
they say that it's not needed, do they mean they won't do it?
The traffic engineer has to authorize these.
Right.
Based on the wording of their policies. You have to meet certain metrics, or the traffic engineer has to support it. And so these are the ones he indicated he felt like he could support. The board also asked me to purchase a couple portable signs.
Right.
That VDOT indicated that, you know, they didn't have a lot of heartburn for those floating around, and the batteries worked for a couple weeks. So places like Viewtown Road and others that they didn't believe they could support a permanent sign, they could be deployed in those places.
I did, not to get too far afield, but I've been driving a lot through Madison and going down to Charlottesville, and it seems like there's a new sign as you're coming north off of 29 into Madison. And I don't know if there's anything to learn from them there.
Yeah, I think they're temporary, because I've seen them bouncing around Madison a little
It's
bit.
permanent, isn't it, Mr. Jackson? It's
Yeah.
temporary? Yeah.
I can tell you on my travels during June, entering every single town practically,
Okay.
you have one of those. And it pops a little smiley face up if you're doing good things, and
I've never
less than a smiley face if you're not.
Okay.
I don't think we'll have the smiley face, but.
Well, and I wanted to make sure that whatever, for the permanent signs, I know we discussed this, but also for the temporary signs, that all of them have the ability to record data.
Yes, that's a feature, added feature. It's not very expensive, but it's an added feature that will definitely be included.
Yeah, I think that'll help us maybe to gain some traction with other locations in the future if we could continue to research that data and have more information to present to VDOT too.
Right, and so we've had lengthy discussions about passing zones and speed zones, and of course, they do speed sampling with over 2 weeks, and this would be able to provide a lot more data as to what the 85th percentile speed is, and like you said, provide more evidence to them that there should be a change.
Sounds good.
And I didn't hear it, is there an expectation as to when you think we're actually start seeing some signs?
I don't think the VDOT process will be very long, but I don't know.
Okay.
So, to Mr. Deacon's point, I live in Woodville, I live right on the road, and he is absolutely correct that it's an issue. I have a hard time seeing why, and I guess it's their metrics, their study that they did, why that side, well, the southern side is where they're gonna put it, and not the northern side, as we have an issue both ways. That's anecdotal from me, but, I mean, if you just spend a little bit of time in Woodville, you know. So again, back to my point is that, do you think it's likely or possible that if we do one, that it might spur another one, or?
I can't say, but
I mean, I think it would be useful to have two.
Could use one of the portable ones for a little while and
We
improve the
can.
need.
We can.
in general, there was not a lot of support to put any up.
From Vita?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I think we're positioned well with where we are.
From their data?
Right.
Or just
Yeah.
knee jerk? Hey, you
Just
guys don't need it.
How the conversation started to how they ended up.
Okay.
So I think if we can show positive results, then bring those results back to the engineer and ask them to consider other locations.
But that's not something we can do now.
I've pushed about as far as I can get to get the 5.
Can we do another temporary one on the side of Woodville?
We can do, yeah, I think the temporary can move around, so they just connect to the existing tubular post, and but they should
Because
be.
in Culpeper, they move them around. They just show up all of a sudden and then they're gone.
Right.
Right, so you're gonna get the ones that attach the signs, not the pull behind. Not the trailer.
Right,
Right.
right.
Yeah, okay, got it. So it could bounce to Viewtown and,
But I was told to get 2.
Well, I'd like to keep one on Viewtown temporarily.
okay, got it.
And I think I've made it clear that I'd like one from where 211 goes from 2 lanes to 1 lane on the approach to Sperryville.
Yeah.
It's not a place that VDOT supported, but it's a place that obviously needs a lot of attention.
Well, if you want more than 2 temporary, I think we don't want to overstay our welcome with VDOT on what temporary means, and they should probably move around, and they need to be tended to every couple of weeks anyway, so.
Move them 2 or 3 feet.
Well, the other thing that they'll be useful for is when there's construction going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Mm.
or an event possibly. I mean, are these things pretty easy to move around?
Yeah, I think it's just tools strapped to a post.
And the data collection, do you have to bring it in?
No, it's Wi-Fi, so
Okay.
you just need to be within about 300 feet with a Wi-Fi enabled device.
So you'll just be able to link it to the date where it was for the date.
So that means we need cell towers.
No,
We have them
No.
at Sperryville, not a problem.
you don't have to be connected to the internet, you just have to have the device, a phone close to the widget.
But hopefully the
That was
data
a
will
joke.
support the need that VDOT will eventually do the permanent if we can prove it.
Right.
The problem, and they're always gonna say it, they've said it for years, they say it every time we talk to them, is enforcement.
It is.
And unfortunately, you know, you can't change people's behavior. They just,
I do think there's some complacency and people are just zipping down the road and they're not paying attention, and these sort of things do help them remember, I guess, come to understanding that maybe they aren't going 35.
aggressively, you know, give tickets and make sure that they pay them. That's about the only thing you can do.
A lot of deputies in Culpeper County, maybe just hire some of them.
More deputy.
And also in Europe, you see a lot of speed cameras, which you can't do here unless it's a school zone or a construction zone, at least right now. And that's another option possibly in the future if the state law changes.
That's all I know. Those cameras can be, they can be wrong, you know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of places do a civil fine, so it doesn't hit your points, but you have to pay a fine, and so they get at you that way.
All right?
Okay, so we'll stay on this.
Oh, yeah, I expect significant progress between now and your next meeting.
Excellent.
Thank you.
New commercial activity?
Well, speaking of new commercial activity, we probably don't need any speed signs in the town of Washington because lately traffic has not been flowing. So two things I want to highlight on this standing agenda item, and I appreciate your indulgence in hosting this on our agenda on a recurring basis. First of all, on the Inn at Little Washington front, there was sort of an out-of-the-blue demolition project that occurred. I believe it happened like last Friday, and it didn't really have any adverse effect on the town, but around the same time, it seemed like the inn had some sort of HVAC crisis, and I think it was on Friday and Saturday, Main Street, the inn all the way down toward Harris Hall Road was literally packed with HVAC trucks. Trucks parked in the middle of the road, people working at the inn, moving carts across the road. And I just highlight that because I think I will engage the inn management to see what the plan is with respect to the 211 project, in particular for the purpose of parking. Because I feel like that demolition project, it was just the old Middle Street Gallery directly adjacent to the inn. They tore that down, and it just seemed like there was a cascading effect of traffic and trucks, and so I hope that as they go forward in this project, that 211 initiative will take some truck and contractor traffic pressure off of the town, because I'm really concerned, which is why this agenda item I felt was important. I am approaching VDOT about painting the road. There's a fire hydrant just before you get to Skippy's old store, the cash store, and that fire hydrant is routinely parked in front of. And so I'm gonna have VDOT hopefully stripe that section of road to keep that under control. And then that difficult intersection at Harris Hollow Road, where the new no parking signs were put up, I'm going to ask that they stripe where they're able, where there's pavement, so that people don't continue to park in that no parking area, because it's really creating a big problem. And I just see increased activity, contractors, et cetera, that's not likely to get any better until that 211 project is finished. The other immediate project that in the town of Washington that I've been looking at is the Rush River Commons project. And I do have constituents across 211 who have been experiencing some sediment flowing into their pond. And I met with them recently, and I want to say that Mr. Ockery's team has actually been quite responsive to make sure that they are taking care of it. It appears that the sediment is not significant and it's well under control, but nevertheless their pond is still seems to be filling in a little bit. And Mr. Ockery has employed Mr. Burke, our former building official, as a consultant, and he's been excellent in in talking with my constituents and making sure that they know that in the end, the Rush River Commons project will do right by them. So I'm grateful for that. But you know, I didn't mean to create a monster with this agenda item, but I in the last week, I feel like it's entirely justified. And to the extent I'll need board consensus to take further action on any front, I'll certainly consult with you all. But for the time being, they're very small things, like contact with VDOT about road striping, for example. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we know if Mr. Burke has any current certifications in erosion and sediment control?
No, I don't know. I think he's acting as somewhat of a clerk of the works for the project.
Yeah.
Managing contractors and whatnot.
We don't know if he ever had any.
I wasn't here. He did tell me that they were taking aerial photos on a routine basis of the construction site and the downstream properties to help track over time what the baseline is and what's happening so that they're better able to be responsive. Obviously, they have a responsible land disturber engaged within the project. They have to in order to get the permits, and they have a stormwater management permit with the state, DEQ, in addition to just erosion sediment control with us. So,
I'm just trying to figure out what role he would play.
like I said, I think a clerk of the works type of coordinating, managing various contractors.
But he's also been very active, like I said, in going out and speaking to people who've raised concerns about the project and taking note of concerns and taking them back to the developer. So, I mean, it seems like he's playing a pretty important role.
Anyone else have anything commercial activity related?
I did just want to mention that it occurred to me when I heard that a restaurant was opening back above the building offices again. I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but having a restaurant back in that building, to my mind, turns up the heat on getting the county offices out of that building, especially a seafood restaurant. I don't know if you all ever spent much time in there when Tools was upstairs, but it was not a pleasant place to work under a restaurant. And I think we all remember the extensive water damage episode. And so to have an active restaurant upstairs, again, if there's anything that we can do to, help make that a better workplace for our employees, and to keep an eye on that situation as it evolves.
Thank you. Good point.
All right, going into the meals and lodging tax rate.
I can brief this, and basically, as the board is aware, during your FY24 budget deliberations, you considered, you assumed revenue forecast based on changing the meals and lodging tax rates from 4% to 6%. Towards the end of your deliberations, you decided to delay the implementation till the second quarter of the fiscal year, and that would allow you some time to see if the state is going to do anything. And unfortunately, we still aren't really sure what or if the state will do. But the timeline for the board to move forward to adopt an ordinance in place for a tax rate change to be effective October 1 necessitates an authorization to advertise public hearing to occur on August 3rd, and for that authorization to happen today. The Code of Virginia changed just a little bit with respect to ordinances and public hearing notices and when they have to happen, and so that's built into this as well. The meals tax rate ordinance is really simple. It simply changes the word 4 to 6. The lodging ordinance could be as simple, changing the word 4 to 6, but the state also passed some other legislation this year that helps us with the lodging front with the intermediaries. Those are like Airbnb and VRBO, who are charged with collecting taxes now. But before this law change, they wouldn't tell us who they were collecting them from. And so it made it very difficult from a compliance standpoint. This new law changes that. And so we need to mimic that state law language in local ordinance. And the Commissioner of Revenue, with her statewide group, they've developed a standard local ordinance to be considered by localities, and we would like the board to consider those changes at the same time as we move forward with a potential change of the tax rate. The sample ordinance template is attached. It tracks what we have fairly closely with the addition of the sections that would require the intermediaries to report. If the board is comfortable with staff developing a draft ordinance and advertising it as necessary for an August public hearing, after review by legal counsel, then we'll go forward and we'll advertise that. Otherwise, if you want to see that ordinance before we go to public hearing, then we'll simply advertise the 4 to 6 and then come back at a second swing to change the wording to line up with the state code. We just need a little direction from the board on that, and then seek your permission to authorize us to advertise public hearings.
So, wait, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking out loud. I think we should always know what we're gonna advertise before we authorize the advertising.
Understand, and so that's why we attached the sample ordinance. We would really just be merging the two documents, but if you want to see it fully in our ordinance format, then we can do that.
So what is, logistically, what is, if we were to go Mr. Frazier's route and see it in final form before scheduling a public hearing, does that mean it would delay everything a month, or?
If you want to have your meals and lodging tax rate effective October 1, we must have that public hearing in August.
Okay.
Because we must report any changes in the rate to the state 30 days before they become effective.
Yep.
So that's simply changing the word 4 to 6. That's simple. If you want to expand beyond that and do everything at one time, we still need to stick to the same timeline, but we will have to merge this sample ordinance template in with our existing to, provide that new document. We can do 2 steps, and really all that will do is delay the mandated reporting, which we might get anyway if they're following state law.
What do you mean delay the mandated reporting?
So in those intermediaries, Airbnb,
Yeah.
reporting to us that
Oh, I see.
who pay taxes, and so
And, I mean, we want to be in that system sooner rather than later, right?
yeah.
So is there any way to authorize this, but perhaps look at the new draft ordinance, for instance, at our broadband meeting? If we had something, or do we have an interim meeting?
You could have an interim meeting. You could advertise.
Am I correct in thinking if we don't authorize this today, it will push back being implement our sales and lodging if we need them?
No, well, I would ask you to, at minimum, authorize us to advertise the public hearing for that 4 to 6.
Right.
So also knowing that as long as the advertisement is clear, then you could choose to adopt just the 4 to 6 or the entire thing after a public hearing. And if you aren't happy with the language of that change for that reporting, then you can just have a separate public hearing for that after the public hearing. That's another option.
But the Airbnb and HomeAway.coms of the world are not going, they're not going to be compelled to report the way we're going to require until it's on the books, or is that driven by the state?
I'm not entirely sure about that. I mean, there is state law that says that they have to, but whether having the local ordinance or not on top of that, I'm not sure if it would change.
It seems unlikely to me that any one of those companies is gonna,
Look at our.
they're gonna look at the Commonwealth and go, what do we have to do?
Right. And so if they don't do it, then I think you'd need the local ordinance to lean on.
So that, it sounds like that part probably won't have any real world effect if we advertise 4% to 6% increase and then get the additional language, look at it when we have the public hearing on the 4 to 6 change, and then adopt that later.
That would certainly work.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move that we authorize the county administrator to publicly notice an ordinance amendment, public hearing for an increase in the meals and lodging tax rate aligned with the assumptions including the adopted FY24 budget, which is to increase from 4% to 6%, both the meals and lodging tax rates. And I believe that by truncating that action in that motion, I've left aside the
Yeah.
second part.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to state for the record that I thought we could resort to increasing these taxes when we had a large gap in the budget this year, but as the gap narrowed and narrowed, it became clear to me that we could address what was left with budget cuts, and so I don't support these tax increases, and I'll continue to not support these tax increases.
Can you point directly to the budget cuts that you'd
We
like
should
to see?
have cut the school budget, just like I said during that budget session.
Oh, no, I meant like, could you point exactly where you'd like to cut it?
We don't have line item discretion over the school budget. We reviewed all this during the budget session.
I was just asking you if you could point to it right now. If you could say to me, hey, I'd like this amount to come out from
It was
this
about
bar.
$200,000 that we should have cut out of the school budget.
And do you have a place where you would have like?
We don't have line item discretion over the school budget.
We
We don't, the budget doesn't work that way, Mr. Carney. We only allot a number, a large number to the budget for the school, and then the school board decides where that money goes. When we started out, there was a $500,000 difference between what they were asking for and what we were expecting to receive. And as it whittled down and whittled down, there was only about a $200,000 difference in those numbers. And so I do not support raising these taxes. I think we should have made tax cuts. And if we didn't make those cuts, we should have made other cuts because we had time to do it.
We actually, I don't mean to get in the middle of it.
Can I just follow?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So I understand how our budgeting process works. And I view it as sort of, since I know the school board members and I know Dr. Grimsley and.
I know them too.
If we were to suggest, hey, cut out $200,000, I think it's also reasonable to say, in a collaborative process, hey, it could come out of here, or why don't we try this, or why don't you look at this, or this is what we're thinking. And so my question to you is that, you know, if you give them a bucket of money that's less, that's one way of doing it. There's also another way of doing it, which is we're trying to get to the same end, which
Well,
is
we've
fun.
cut the school
I'll just-
budget before, and we've never given line items
just
or
wasn't quite
suggestions
finished.
before.
And-
We've always just recommended a certain amount, and then the school has absorbed it gracefully and made the cuts that they needed to do it. In the very large, nearly $14 million budget that they have, there were certainly areas that they could have made cuts. And as we discussed during the budget sessions, one of those areas is probably fuel, as fuel prices have continued to come down. But it is a big picture question, and it is a matter of making tweaks as you work through the year to adapt those budget items to where you do have a decrease. But you're correct, I don't have a number to pull out of the school budget to say we can realize savings here. But we weren't at a place, and Dr. Grimsley admitted it in that last meeting, where she was looking at reducing her staff. That was her concern when it was a $500,000 difference. But the $100,000, $200,000, if they had been short, we would have figured out a way to get it to them.
If I could.
I just wasn't quite finished, and when I was
Well, I'm
interrupted, and
finished,
I-
and we've discussed this already during the budget session, so I really think any further discussion is fruitless, but I don't support this tax increase.
I'll just, when you said to me meetings ago, there are no interruptions, I will agree to that. I just wanted to finish what I was saying, which was that I view it as a collaborative process, and I was genuinely interested when you said, hey, like, I don't want to do these tax cuts. I know that, or tax hikes, I know that folks are not interested in them. So I was coming to you, and not in an adversarial way, but in a way where I'm like, hey, what would you like to have seen specifically? You seem like, because you threw it out there, hey, we don't have to do this, we can do this. And I understand that you can just cut funding. I understand that. So I'm genuinely asking, and I'm not trying to pressure you here, I just wanted to know.
I think I've addressed this more than one time, and we had an opportunity to review it further during the budget sessions. But you all wanted to adopt the budget that night, and so we did, and it's done. And this is a result of that budget, and I still don't support it.
I think I would,
We have categorical approval process, but the board has only done that once, and then the board turned around and made a calamity out of that. So it hasn't been done again, but we do have categorical approval process, so we can say out of the 7 categories, you can take some here, some there, or all of it from one. But what I just watched in this last budget process was that they had several positions that had retired, and they didn't refill them, which tells me that they weren't necessary the last couple of years that we were paying them. And I said that as well, and nobody wanted to pick up on that role and run with it.
well, I don't disagree with you. And what I was going to add to this discussion, and I know Ms. Smith, you said as we were looking at a set of variables that could lead to adopting a balanced budget. I know that you made the statement that we as a board hadn't done the hard work. And I will say, in my own defense, that I went to the school and you heard me in multiple meetings and I said, please provide details on any one-time expenditures in the school budget. And it took them about 5 minutes and they came back and there was one-time expenditure in the school budget. Do you know what that was? Does anyone remember?
It was that $60,000 differential that you found, wasn't there?
No, there was a $200,000 line item that was state mandated, quote, restricted for capital improvements. And my question, and I asked multiple times, and you heard that, I said, is that really restricted? Yeah, it's really
I do
restricted.
remember that.
And I went back a couple of times. So as we talk about engaging with the school and asking the hard questions, I don't want to be lumped into an idea that we are passive or in any way not trying to cover budget deficits through hard questions and hard decisions. And when I asked the third time, I said, let's close this line of inquiry, get for us whatever legislative history or legislative documentation you need to provide to demonstrate that that $200,000 one-time spend is in fact restricted. And the answer was that it was not entirely restricted and that 60% of it was usable for other purposes. And so I said to Dr. Grimsley, well, there's 120,000 right there. And in the end, we had a separate issue come up on the social services front that resulted in, I think, roughly $100,000 savings. And so between the social services 11th hour savings that resulted from someone being on the social service rolls falling off as an adult, combined with the flexibility that was identified in the $200,000 line item in the school budget, and the 60% of it that could be applied to whatever, maintenance or otherwise, we found a way to bridge the gap. So I understand where you're coming from. I understand where Mr. Carney's coming from also, and I just want to be able to say the work that I did in that process, because I do not want to be characterized, nor will I accept being characterized as being passive or somehow just throwing my hands up and saying to the schools, okay, we'll cover your deficit, because that's not what happened.
Well, I don't think I said that this evening. And I think what I said was I didn't support it then, and I still don't support it. And my experience on the board is that in my second year on this board, we shorted the school budget $150,000, and everything worked out fine. So I do understand where my peers are coming from, but I still think we shouldn't be doing this, and I don't support it.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think I made it clear when I got everyone's agreement to wait until we got a chance to see what Richmond did. There's still the potential out there, but hopes are dwindling, I think. So anyway, we have a motion and a second.
May I just ask one more question? Doesn't one of these have a cap, Mr. Curry? Isn't there a cap on one of them as to how high you can go?
Yes.
And that's the meals?
Yes.
So in the future, we can't increase the meals any further? We'll be at the cap for now?
Right. According to the current code. Right.
So just a reminder that we can't come back to this bucket anymore as things are now. The bucket is full.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I didn't get
I
Mr.
didn't.
Frazier's vote.
I should have voted nay. Can you
Nay.
make mine a nay?
It's,
I got all caught up.
it's a scheduled public hearing. You don't even want to schedule.
I don't want to schedule a public hearing even.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought somehow we were really persuasive.
No,
okay.
sorry.
I didn't
Good.
really
I do
think
like,
so.
I do like to agree with people, but this is not one of those occasions.
Well, I had to lean over to the chair and say, did we vote?
Okay.
I got so lost.
All right, moving into reports. We have board committee reports. Building committee?
Building committee has the RFP on the streets, and we're awaiting the returns of that. I guess we'll be scheduling a meeting to sort through the responses.
Yeah, they're due on the 6th.
And I did just want to mention that we had the balloon flight since the last meeting. And I thought we had a great turnout for that. We probably had 50 or 60 people come out that day. It was nice, or at least early in the day. It got a little warm as the day went on. But people seemed to, I don't know if enjoy, but they were interested in seeing the layout and the balloon flight in the context of the courthouse lawn, and to take in the footprint that was laid out and the balloon flight for the day, which I thought went off very well.
I was really sorry to have missed it. Did you guys have an opportunity to have feedback from the public? Was there any way to get feedback?
Oh, yeah. We had, we sort of took turns. I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but we sort of took turns walking with people around the site as folks showed up, and there was a screen on the porch of the former administrative offices showing some of the concepts, and there were handouts for people as they walked the footprint, and we tried to engage. There was cookies and lemonade. We made a definite effort to engage and to keep folks comfortable so that they could spend some time out there, and we tried to answer all questions and be as forthcoming, and even if we didn't have the information, to encourage people to participate and to engage the resources on the website as well. So I thought it was a very positive day.
Thanks for organizing all that.
I mean, you can just tell from some of the conversations, and you can tell from some of the recent letters to the editors that people haven't been engaged.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody wants you to start over where we were 2 years ago, as if we haven't been there, so.
I would just say too, in response to some of the questions we had at the last board meeting where people said, well, who wants to build a new courthouse? I think if all of us had our way, we wouldn't. It's not something we want to do. But I think in retrospect, if we find ourselves in a year or two down the road where we need to do it in an expedited way, we will regret not doing this work now.
And it just sitting here for the one hearing recently where someone needed to use a stair lift, it stopped the whole process.
Oh, yeah.
It's just too noisy. It has always been too noisy, but it was about the only way to make it handicap accessible, this building, without building an elevator.
Did you guys get a sense of if people were generally supportive, or were people, I'm really curious, it sounds like you had a lot of people there. I'm really curious to see hear the comments overall.
Most people only got engaged when the newspaper incorrectly reported that we were discussing tearing the building down. And so they're trying to play catch up, and at the same time, a lot of people want to be relevant, and they just, they're making comments without reading the history, and it's a shame that there's so much that has already been done and we need to do, and we haven't actually settled on a design. We're just, kind of rolling the needs into a square footage, and that's really all we really are at right now, is the needs and the square footage.
I will say, when I pulled up to the site, I didn't know what the balloon was going to look like flying on the site, and I took it in and kind of thought in the context of the lay of the land, with the mature trees around it, that it looked like it fit well in context with the surroundings. I didn't hear anybody say, oh, that's taller than I thought it would be, or I had some questions about why the footprint was kind of so in and out around the sides, but what we tried to encourage folks to do that day is not be married to a design, but just the size. The massing of the building was really the exercise that day. So, and that was generally what I heard from people. And the other thing that I heard was that in terms of the way that that land slopes, it was very complementary to the site.
Good.
All right, thank you. Recreational Facilities Authority.
We had an emergency meeting to discuss recently last week, emergency meeting, sort of impromptu meeting, to discuss the playground. As we had, some of the playground committee members had done some arsenic testing, and it came back very positive. That playground was built with CCA treated lumber before it was made illegal to use. And we became aware of that sort of as a park board, when we had some discussions with, to confirm some of the folks that originally built it. And so we tested it, and it came back pretty high. Now, it wasn't done professionally. We had some of the playground committee members do it. So we had a meeting to discuss what we should do. So we currently are engaged with a professional services company through the county that has offered to do some of these services. But where we got to was the chair has really organized and coordinated how to kind of get this stuff done. And we're going to put out an RFP to at least just get back some information from other folks to figure out how, or to give us a quote on what it would cost to do professional testing of the soil and whatnot.
So
To get a
Joyce / Labella
Yeah.
provided them a quote on the consultant we have working at the landfill who, who understand environmental sampling, et cetera, provided a quote, and they're going to get an RFP to look at the broader market.
What is the immediate concern about the level of arsenic in the soil?
Don't eat the soil.
Yeah, don't eat it, right?
Don't eat
Yeah,
So, I mean,
sometimes children.
And the testing, a lot of folks
So.
are really, and I understand, are really attached to the playground. When we had the insurance company come out and look at it, this was when we had the insurance company come out just to look at the park and just give us some suggestions about random things. They were like, there's some things you can do to kind of remediate it. It would require basically hitting it with some kind of sealer every 6 months, but people just take these things out because there is, you can get cancer from arsenic. So a lot of people are attached to it. We're trying to figure out what to do with the playground. There's some issues with accessibility. Certain kids have a certain difficult time playing there because of accessibility issues. So we're trying to take an overall look at the park and what it is we need to do. And this is part of one of those things that we feel, since we know that it is arsenic wood, I mean, we need to do the right thing, at least in my view. And find out what to do in terms of that. Now, these things can get expensive, which is why I wanted to put out an RFP, is to make sure that the testing that we have is done properly, if we're going to do it at all, and that we have numerous bids from folks. DEQ has said that they would help us to look at the bids and to make sure that they're legitimate and that they would cover what we need to have covered. So that's the discussion that we had as a park board last week. We put out a press release to the paper to just let folks know this is what we're doing, so we have full transparency. It was in the paper a while ago that it was an arsenic, CCA treated playground. And again, these things are all over the place and they're slowly coming down as people are aware of them. We just wanted to just bring it into the public's consciousness and make sure everybody knows. We are spreading mulch though, consistently and thoroughly now, which helps for sure. Little kids crawling.
Put up a don't eat the mulch sign.
You can eat
We
the
are
mulch.
putting. No, we are.
I'm not kidding.
No,
I
we're
think we
putting
had to put one out at the river one year because
Yes.
there was some problem with the river down
We're
there.
putting up a sign that says, and I can't remember exactly the wording, but something about, we're testing for arsenic and that, caution or whatever.
Yeah, don't eat the mulch.
Don't eat the mulch, exactly. And wash, maybe just wash your hands.
Fresh mulch is probably.
Sounds good.
I was
So
glad
anyway,
I.
sorry, it was a long-winded way of telling you where we are.
No, it's good to know.
Really good.
I went
Thank
to
you.
your art unveiling.
Oh, cool.
Art on
Oh, cool.
Saturday.
Saturday.
Ephemeral art.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
interesting.
Oh, it was. It was cool. There was one other thing I was just gonna quickly mention, which was that the pickleball lines have been painted. I don't know if you guys know this.
Couldn't not talk about pickleball.
Sorry to bring it up, but I know it's been in our
Not a
budget.
good politician.
There's
That's finally
excitement.
done, and there is a
Sounds clear.
pickleball clinic on the July 22nd.
Oh,
cool.
And Debbie, you stepped in for a meeting. Do you have anything you'd like to add? while I
Well,
was
other
gone?
than pickleball, it was an excellent meeting. You really have a great board, or a great authority, and the excitement and energy and the way the work is divided between the committees is really good group of people, so.
How did it come about that the park, did I understand right now that the businesses of Rappahannock has lost storage space at the visitor center?
We read that as well. So
We can save that for that update if you prefer.
the rec authority has shuffleboard and basketballs and
Pickleball
various.
nets, yeah.
The pickleball net's going to a different closet,
Oh,
but
good.
that's something that Bonnie and I weren't aware of, that there might have been a competition for the space.
I was not aware of that, and I was very surprised to learn that it
Yeah.
costs $1,200 a year to store those supplies.
I don't know.
Well, as a rec authority, we've certainly talked about getting a shed. We have stuff in the jail.
Oh, yeah, I
We've got
know.
stuff, you know.
Oh, I know.
But for those of you who don't, we do. We have stuff scattered around.
And the jail stuff, some of it makes sense for the fodder stack because it's where you want it,
Right.
close to where you want it to be.
We've got
but some of
signage
it doesn't
now,
make
which is
sense.
great. But we have discussed a shed, but sheds are not cheap. So we do need a little bit more
REC has great programs sometimes for grants for things.
for sheds.
Yep, but anyway, July 22nd, pickleball.
Yes, there's a pickleball clinic.
What time?
I think it
Do you know what
starts
time
at
it is, Diane? The pickleball
9 or
clinic at
something.
July
It's,
8 to 1.
Wow.
they're gonna have people there.
Yep.
That can teach you the
Teaching,
game
yep.
and some food, I think, and yeah, it's gonna be a good
It's going to
day.
be an event.
Hopefully it'll be great weather.
Yep.
Public Safety Committee, Chair Whitson.
We did, so we had our quarterly meeting, and I'll ask Mr. Curry and Ms. Donahue, I should have come prepared with notes if I missed anything. We did talk about some irregularities with the paging system. And I think they're relatively isolated issues that Chief Burke raised during our meeting. And I think they're going to try to pin the time and place down to see if it could be subject to troubleshooting. But it sounds like the contractor, is it Harris?
Yeah, L3 Harris. So there was a report that the audio from dispatch was unclear, but the repeated audio from a unit that responded was clear in the same place at the same time, which doesn't make any sense. So that leads to some troubleshooting. Why would that happen?
Yeah.
So some of the things we think might be RF related might be something else.
And then committee member Nick raised, I think, a topic that's all at the forefront of our minds after the recent head-on collision near Narmada, and that is what more can be done to prevent wrong way driving on 211. And we're all thinking hard about it. I know Mr. Curry forwarded a journal article by some traffic engineering students that involve like one-way rumble strips,
Yeah.
which would be used like to prevent people going up off ramps or down on ramps. Not sure if there's any solution, but the idea I think is to have VDOT come to our next quarterly meeting and just talk with us. The idea is this can't only be our problem.
Was there alcohol involved in that? I mean, I've read very little about it.
Well, in a lot of these instances, you get calls to dispatch that there's a wrong-way driver, but it doesn't manifest in any arrest or contact with law enforcement. So it abates itself before
Right.
anybody's ever involved. And those statistics are in dispatch, and the sheriff and Lieutenant Jenkins pulled many, I don't have the numbers with you, there was over 50 incidents where they had received calls with issues, wrong-way drivers, as opposed to actual incidents where something happened were relatively minor, an accident or something. And VDOT tracks that smaller subset of data. So when this came to a head with me and VDOT with our monthly meetings, trying to figure out how to attack the problem, they had very limited data showing there wasn't much of a problem. But really the data that we need to bring to their attention are these almost problems where reports were called in, but fortunately nobody was injured. And when I had those conversations with VDOT before, the state police was involved, and they committed and went through every crossover and checked all the signage at every crossover to make sure it met the MUTCD requirements. But they won't put signage up at private entrances. And so I went round and round, and we had some spirited conversations about that, whether they would do it, would it allow us to do it under a land use permit, and they were generally not supportive of any of that. And the signs that you do see put up have to be put up on the private property owner's property. So when you approach a divided highway, no left turn or something like that, but not in the right of way. And in those areas where we see it in the right of way, probably don't have a permit, but we won't highlight them.
I wondered about that myself after that accident, and so one day I was coming back from town, I wasn't driving, and so every time there was an opportunity to enter the road and there was a crossover to the other side, I did look back to
Yep.
see if they were marked, and as far as I could tell, they were all marked very well. And there were probably 10 or 12 different occasions between Massey's Corner and the vicinity of where I understand the accident transpired that were marked that you clearly should not have been going that way.
Yeah.
And so I think it's tragic, but I mean, at the end of the day, we also have to have roads that people can drive on and that snowplows can plow.
Right.
And that, aren't disturbing to the people that live around them.
Yeah, I guess the one idea that came up is, in fact, as I just said a little while ago, there's no need to reinvent the wheel here. I mean, there have to be other rural communities with 4-lane divided highways like ours that have encountered similar problems. It seems that there's some visual trick that's occurring, and maybe there's no sign, maybe there's no device, maybe there's no remedy, practical or otherwise, but something isn't right.
The 211 has been 4-lane in different segments since around 71. I mean, I remember when they went through Amosville, Hackley Store area in the fire department, and I remember each segment and the last segment was of course the one up here in Sperryville as going past Gib Brown, but just before that I believe it was the section, for some reason it hadn't been done, down there by Lombardi's. And I remember when that one was done, but y'all can get mad at me if you want to, but the large number of wrong-way drivers has increased since the influx of wineries. That's the truth of the matter. The road's been there for 40 years or more, closer to 50.
Mr. Frazier hits on an important point, is that these agritourism entities don't require site plans, and all they need is an agritourism moderate volume commercial entrance. So if you had a commercial entity and you went through a site planning process, you might be able to provide channelized entrances where you have a median that kind of forces you to turn right.
But you can't do
But
that with a
you can't
farm
do that.
winery. I mean,
That's
it's
right.
the same driveway that was there when it was a farm, and now it's a winery. It might have been an orchard previously, but now you've got a large number of vehicles leaving there. Not everybody's paying attention.
And cell phones aren't helping, I'm sure.
Did Norma just sell?
I don't know.
There's
I would-
there's a sign right there, right? When you
There
come out
is.
of Norma, it's like,
Yeah,
And they actually have a
In the
sign, I
median.
think, at their gate as you're leaving, they have a sign that instructs you how to enter the
So that might
highway.
not
They've tried to,
But the
I guess-
reflectors in the road, if you're going the wrong way, the road is red,
Yeah, if they're new enough, they.
If you're paying attention.
if you're paying
Yes.
attention. If you're not able to pay attention, that's another thing.
Or you're just telling the person in the car, oh, look, they have red reflectors here.
Wow, look at these
Rappahannock County.
it's a terrible accident, and I wish there was a good, easy solution, and, for my part, I did sort of rest easier when I went and did the tour and made sure that everything was marked as well as we could mark it.
So VDOT's the experts of our transportation network, and we'll invite them to the Public Safety Committee. They can explain to us how they're doing everything they can, or whether there might be other options.
And then not to beat the VDOT dead horse here, but at our Public Safety Committee, another issue now that's come up twice is VDOT has just recently started putting weight limitations on certain bridges in Good Brown Hollow, Harris Hollow, and probably Old Hollow also. And the point was made that a fully loaded tanker likely exceeds, at least in the case of Harris Hollow, the posted weight limit of that bridge for the number of axles. And the point was also made that, you know, it's cheaper to put up a sign than replace a bridge. But I think we do want to hear from VDOT also about where those signs came from and why. Because like one day they appeared. And so if you come in Get Brown Hollow or you come in Harris Hollow, you get back in those hollows or even before you get into the hollows, there are signs that say have very established weight limits for bridges.
Yeah, they just changed it to add the different types of vehicles, whether it's a trailer or a box truck type thing, and they added another category for emergency vehicle, which was the crux of the question of what does that even mean, and why does it make a difference? So we're hoping to get that answer from them as well.
Emergency vehicle wouldn't be that often, whereas delivery trucks could be quite.
Right.
often.
Right, but it seemed to be a
One-time
lower number,
filler.
so.
Yeah.
But so, just have a quick question. So are they now disallowing fully loaded tankers back?
Well, it's basically there's a weight limit for
You have to
emergency
take a long
vehicles.
way around. Just like the North Pose Bridge, you have to take a long way around.
Yep.
Huh.
And so it'll be on, I asked about the Harris Hollow Bridge, and it's not on their schedule right now, and so
Okay.
that it's been listed even lower. They swapped the signs out probably 2 months ago, probably after another inspection. It'll eventually make it to the list in the residency or district, I think.
I encountered a similar issue in down 231 a few years ago. And I would support using dollar for dollar matches with VDOT money if there's a way to do that for some of this aging infrastructure. I think in that instance, it was building materials and, some deliveries people needed to have made to their home. And these are essential necessities. And if it's going to be an inconvenience, I think it should be something we would look at.
Good.
I'm good. I think that
You covered it.
covered it.
Yeah, thank you. Rules Committee,
We didn't meet.
Planning Commission update.
You have a report as part of the zoning administrator's report. Any questions, let me know.
Fire Levy Board,
We did not meet.
you did not meet. All right. Moving into the treasurer's report, cash flow. Looks good. We're definitely close to 2022 in the end, huh?
Yeah, everything looks good. Just the normal statement. Don't misinterpret these as being end of fiscal year reports. They're not. There'll be plenty of expenses over the next month or two that accrue back.
Yeah.
Because they were for goods and services that were purchased in June. And then there's some accounting adjustments that will happen from the beginning of the fiscal year as well.
I was looking at the revenue report from Treasurer Nick, and the one item that really stood out to me, because it's a huge number, was the revenue on our deposits. And I asked her, I can't find the number now, but it's like 364% higher than it was previous year. The budget was 5, and it went up to 340,000, something like that. Yep. So I did ask her, and she wrote back. She currently has the funds invested in the VIP and Atlantic Union's overnight sweep. All of these funds are earning over 5% due to the increased interest rates. All of these methods are allowed by Virginia Code. I've negotiated with Union to pay an additional 0.05% to have our money with them. By doing so, we should also see an increase next year in our bank franchise tax. I don't remember what we budgeted.
For interest revenue?
Yep.
We increased the budget by $275,000 for fiscal '24. And it looks like we may receive around $390,000 in fiscal '23. So there may be some room there that we need to look at to see if that might continue for fiscal '24, even higher than what was budgeted. I went and looked at the Federal Reserve rate increases. They increased the rates 7 times in fiscal '23 for an increase of 3.5%. So that's what's driving this increase.
Thank you for doing that.
So remind us, what do we budget for interest revenue for FY '24?
We budgeted $280,000 in fiscal '23.
Oh, okay.
We will likely receive about $390,000.
And what did we budget for 23?
$5,000.
$5,000.
Where does this money have to go?
Where does it have to go? It's interest earnings. It can go for any.
Can it go anywhere?
Yes.
What was, we just authorized a tax increase in meals and lodging. Would this money cover that?
No, it would not fully cover that. It could cover a portion of it.
You're saying because we already, as we try to balance the budget, we still had a gap even with the projected increase in interest revenue.
Yeah, now, you're at, you look back over the last 3 or 4 years, and we were collecting a couple or maybe $200,000 in interest revenue. Your funds that you were holding were a little less, and the interest was okay. And then interest crashed to basically zero, right?
Right.
Which is why
Yeah.
for '23, we chased that down.
Yeah.
And so now they're on the rise. But which of you are ready to say that it will be 5% on average for the
Right.
entire fiscal '24? And so, it's an appetite for risk. And so if you want to forecast and say that it will be 5% or whatever it is now, then you could certainly forecast more revenue than what is in the adopted budget. But, we don't know.
Well, I guess so we've authorized just noticing this. We don't have to take any steps. But I'm saying, in light of this information, I'm assuming we can always go backwards. We can't go above it, right? Like we could pull. We've
Yes.
gone from what have we gone from 4 to 6?
That's right.
And so we theoretically, wait, is it above 5% or is it that we get to keep that after go to tourism? Is it 3 to 5?
It's above 5, but it's nuanced because of the combined.
I'm just saying, is there a possibility that in a discussion, we could say, hey, we don't need to do all of this. We could do it a penny. We're still advertising the full rate, but we could pull it back. Is that even a possibility?
If you advertise a public hearing to raise it to 6%, you could adopt an ordinance, you could not adopt any change. You could adopt one that's
Yeah.
5, 6,
And what's-
anything in between 4 and 6, less than 4.
Percentage on meals and lodging tax rate again is generating how much in revenue?
Right at $200,000.
200,000. So in order to obviate the need to go from 4 to 6, you're talking about covering $400,000 in revenue, right? Is that what you just said?
No, it's $200,000 for the 2% change.
Yeah.
So
okay.
we would need to cover, if you didn't want to change that at all, we would need to cover that $200,000.
Oh, it's 200 for the total change.
For the
So
total, yeah.
it's like 93 or something per percentage point, right?
Yes.
So it's possible we could come back one
Yes.
on each, and this could cover that.
And what was the projection for the earned interest?
For which year are we talking? This was 24?
280,000 for
We're about to-
280,000 for two. for
Yeah,
fiscal
because we're in
24.
July now, so we're in the new fiscal year, which is fiscal year '24. And so we budgeted again.
280.
We budgeted 280 for fiscal '24. We are likely to receive about 390 in fiscal
That's
'23.
so now we're down to the numbers. So that's 70 and it covers one, more or less. 1%. 70 covers. The difference,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
difference covers about 1% point in the meals and lodging tax rate, Mr. Curry's like, yeah.
If 24 yields the same thing as 23,
Right.
you-
Just have a
And if all the
appetite
other
for
revenues
risks.
come in as we projected for fiscal '23,
Right.
there are some in here, if you look at them, where the revenue has not come in as projected. So
Yep.
that's yet to be determined with the next 2 months as revenues and expenditures are accrued back to fiscal '23.
But we do know that on the big revenue bucket items like sales and meals and lodging tax for FY '23, we've been watching it every month, and we projected not aggressively, but not conservatively. We projected, I think, just right, and we're coming pretty much in on what we thought our revenue would be for FY '23. So,
sales is looking like it's gonna glide in real close.
okay.
You have a couple months left, but
Yeah, I think sales will meet and exceed the projection for fiscal '23, as will meals and lodging. But of course, we adjusted the fiscal '24 budget relative to those increased projections for fiscal '23.
I know.
So we've already accounted for that
I know.
increase in fiscal '24.
But there's there's potentially, on this new projection for interest revenue, there's potentially, all things being equal, a $70,000 unbudgeted gain
Potentially, yes.
that would offset or obviate the need to maybe not raise meals and lodging taxes to the extent we're proposing.
And that 280 number was based on a 5% number, correct?
Yes, it was based on what we were receiving at the time.
Yeah, okay.
And understand that the rates of the bank are lagging behind what the Federal Reserve is doing, and so we haven't had that full year of increased rates on our actual deposits.
Right.
She did
So-
say, please note that the interest for June has not been posted.
Okay, well, that's
Discussion.
clear.
So I think the takeaway for Bonnie and I is to gather as much information as we can for you on any updated forecasting we think we can bring to you for FY '24 as you making decisions on the meals and lodging tax rate.
But I have to say, you've done a really good job, in my opinion, on forecasting generally. And so, I mean, if you as local government professionals tell us, whoa, don't get carried away, we might get a little carried away, but probably not as much as we otherwise would.
Right.
So, your
As long as
projection.
you're getting carried away and we're not, that's where we want to be.
No,
Balances out.
it's called equilibrium, but, I mean, the forecasting's been pretty good.
Yep.
And it's been a pretty uncertain, weird period the last 4 years with the pandemic and everything else, and it's not like we really didn't get carried away, and I appreciate staff kind of keeping us
All right,
measured.
you want to move into legal matters review?
Sure, I'll just, I updated the report here in board docs, just cover real quickly. Capielli appeal was heard on the 29th, that's last week. Both sides had 15 minutes, and Mr. Mitchell reports that could be a month, could be more, we don't really know, we'll know when we know. So he said there were a lot of questions from the bench, the 3-judge panel, and we'll see.
Still such a new process with this new appeals court
It is.
that they don't really know.
Well, there were a lot of matters that went to the appeals court before, but this land use realm is new for them, and so I don't know if that's good or bad, positive or negative for us. So time will tell. Flint Hill, you're aware of the court sustained the demur on the 16th. As Chief Gerald said, they still have a piece of legal action going with the fire company relative to FOIA that I believe is going to be heard next month. The county's not a party. Caparucio, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. It's the erosion sediment control case on Seven Ponds Road. There was show cause, which I understand the property owner showed up. That was on the 16th as well, and he's got another return date of July 10th. I know that there's a lot of legal activity within the family right now, and that could impact this case. So that's all I can report on that.
All right, building permits, and the only thing I noticed there was we seemed down over a previous year. Is it?
I did speak with, based on the conversation last month, Ms. Smith brought up some questions of year over year, and I communicated with the office, and they're going to tweak the report to try to have some more of their data look at year over year trends, particularly as we head into these busier building projects.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Comcast, I am hearing that Flint Hill's having a lot of trouble, especially the businesses. They're having up, down, up, down.
I know we had another fiber blip happen in the middle of the night, and when we dug into it, they said it was maintenance. Of course, they didn't alert us to it ahead of time. If you can send people, ask them to send a report to me, I can pass it along to our contacts.
Okay. Supposedly, they're being told that the village doesn't have enough, I guess, pipe for everybody that's using it now, which I find hard to believe. We haven't had that much growth.
I don't know who would be telling them that, who they're talking to, but we can certainly get the right people to provide that input,
Okay,
or input on that.
I'll gather some data.
I know it's fiber backhaul over Mountain to Front Royal, and then you have to see those cabinets, right? That's where the fiber transitions to the coaxial, and maybe there's too many coaxial customers on a cabinet, I don't know.
Yeah.
We can ask them to give us information.
All right. Going into matters presented by the board, Mr. Frazier?
I'd like to say that I like these new lights. I just hope we can put a dimmer on them.
There is a dimmer on the can lights. Those were replaced. They could be off, quite frankly. But they're all LED lights, and they shouldn't be turning on and off by themselves anymore because of overheating.
Ms. Smith?
One of those is
sorry.
a dimmer over there?
All the switches on the left are dimmers. They're little sliders next to the switch.
I didn't look at them.
Yep.
I didn't realize LEDs needed different specific dimmers for LEDs, so if you have a combination, it's not a good thing. Ms. Smith?
I'm glad we got some rain. That's about it for me. You know, if we could just have it in small doses, small steady doses, that would be nice.
Yes. Mr. Whitson?
Yeah, I just wanted to, since we've been bringing up VDOT a lot, I want to give accolades to David Jenkins, who's in charge here locally. There's one section of Harris Hollow Road that's in pretty rough shape, and he wrote me today just before our meeting and said they're going to pull in their contractor, mill it, and pave it. I think it's about a 60-foot section of road, but I really appreciate that kind of responsiveness. And now I really wish I had asked a long time ago to have it done. But no, they're very responsive, and also did a nice job trimming the grass on Harris Hollow in particular, which I know is a big job, and they're just playing catch up all the time.
Hopefully the telephone pedestals are well marked this time.
I haven't noticed some.
As a segue, I sent to the board, and others noticed that the VDOT will be starting the 211 paving, or their contractor 211 project, the end of this week. So that's Massey's Corner this way. So when they finish 522, I think there's another road in there, but then they're going to transition over. So a lot of paving going on in the county.
522 seems like it's almost finished.
Yeah, a lot of striping left, I guess.
A little bit more asphalt on the striping.
Mr. Carney?
I just want to thank REC. This is sort of a personal thing that happened at the brewery, but on Saturday we just had no power.
I saw your sign.
I know, we had no power. We got there and we're like, there's no power. And everybody else in Sperryville had power, and apparently a tree went down somewhere. But as I put in something online, I reported my outage, and they were there so fast. And in the process of fixing it, the transformer on site blew up.
Wow.
And they went and got a new one and had one back within like 45 minutes.
Wow.
On a Saturday.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
And I had folks asking me, they were like, oh man, how long is this going to take? And I was like, honestly, REC is really good, and they're probably going to fix it. But I mean, who knows? Who knows what's wrong? So I just wanted to thank you.
I checked your outage map when I saw that. And
Did you?
it did happen really quick. Because, I was pulling in through the village and I saw your sign. I was like, oh no, the whole village is going to be out on a Saturday.
Oh, I started calling around. I was like, what's going on?
And then I pulled up to the corner store and the lights were on. I went, well, at least it's not the whole village. So I watched the village map and you were the only outage affected.
Yep.
And within like an hour, it was fixed. It was amazing.
Yeah.
With a blown up transformer.
Which does highlight the point that on these single sort of issues, while there are smart metering, you do need to call it in. And
Yeah.
if you just think somebody else is gonna do it, there might not be somebody else.
Right.
Right.
And that would have extended your
Right,
outage.
and the online outage map, I didn't make a phone call, I just used that, it was very fast. It was just immediate.
That's great.
So, thank you.
Good job.
And the only thing I have is REC as well. I just keep noticing in towns, and we were just on vacation, and all the wonderful flags hanging off of electric poles or out of sidewalks or whatever. In Madison and Gordonsville, I know they all have them at this point. And I just wrote because I think a couple of years ago, we brought it up, and it was kind of a, we don't do that. We don't allow flags on our electric poles, and I was just wondering if anything had changed, or if there's anything we can do to show our patriotism, because I think Rappahannock County is probably very high up in patriotism.
Yeah, like in our villages in particular.
Yeah, generally we don't want things hung on our poles. However, there are municipalities that have done that before. So if you just give us a heads up, let us know what you're hanging, make sure it's well below the phone lines. Because there's enough clearance from our equipment to the phone lines, so if you're below the phone lines,
Okay.
it should be good, just give us a heads up.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll get something back in writing. If I do, I'll share it with everyone. And obviously tomorrow is July 4th, Sperryville big fundraiser event off of Benvenue, and the gates opened. Does anybody remember? I didn't look.
2 o'clock, I think.
Two or three.
2 or 3. And the
I think
fireworks.
it listed 3 in some places, 2 in others.
I think the fireworks typically go off around 9:30, something like that. 9:30.
There's a permit, and they have a designated window that they have to set them off, and they have a rain day of the next day.
Next
So
day,
the
yep.
sign is posted, there was a notice in the newspaper, and we've had several citizens, restate, at least one citizen reach out to the county and say, how are you going to enforce people who are not following the ordinance? And that was referred to the sheriff.
All right.
I don't mean to speak out of turn, but I did want to just mention, and you may have articles come across your desk from time to time, Mr. Curry. Someone asked me last month about county policies regarding AI and things like self-driving cars, which as far in the future as it may seem out here, it is probably policies being enacted in other places and probably something that we should be thinking about. So especially self-driving cars on our roads that is terrifying.
Talking about runway on 211.
Yeah.
I would expect that we'll have no control over self-driving cars, and that'll be a state sort of thing. And even when 6-7 years ago, we were talking about that in Hampton Roads and thinking there was Jetson type stuff, but Jetsons is now, right? So,
Right.
it's coming. And interconnected cars, I think, is the first thing. So the cars you don't run into the car in front of you because it already knows where it is. Of course, then they rise up and take over.
Well, anyway, that would just be something I'd be interested in. If there's pieces of information that come across your desk, I'd be
Okay.
interested to hear more on that.
Aco's got anything on that?
Maybe.
All right. There's nothing else. We'll recess until 7 p.m.
And
Thank
the
you.
fireworks, I just looked it up, it's at 2 p.m. Hopefully that's right. It was reported in the Rappahannock News.
It's in the news. It's got to be right.
Not to put you on the spot. I kept seeing 2 p.m. So.
That sounds like a random number.
If you're early, all your friends will be there and it'll be fine.
It's like, just
Get a good
hang
parking
forward.
spot.
That way you can eat and
All right.
Safe.
See everybody back
at
at
7 or a
7.
little before.